Hello, everybody. Good morning. So let me, before we start, I want to kind of frame this and reframe it. Actually, you know, when you start creating these sessions, you kind of do it, you know, isolated from really a lot of the reality that things are going to change, are going to evolve, right, from 3 months to the actual day of the event. And so we're talking through this, and we really wanted to hit on the whole issue with the commission's lawsuits. And so as we go through the process, we know that obviously there are legal restrictions, so I want to make sure that we address that head on here and say that's certainly something we're going to discuss today. But as we know, we also have two parties here, very important parties and industry leaders that also have a little bit of restrictions. So we're also going to respect, as they're going through that and representing all of you, those that are members of REMAX and Century 21, some of those restrictions. And then also along with that way, we've added some other exceptional leaders in this space. And so I think this is really appropriate, I think, for us to kind of frame this in terms of really a state of real estate industry, right? Because we have two very powerful brands with global presence. We have both two leaders in the civil rights space as well in fair housing, and also the oldest minority trade association in the country here with NAREB. So I want to start with that because it's really impressive to gather all of you. I don't think we've seen this kind of combination of the Avengers here in this space. Yeah, exactly. And so earlier this morning, we released our State of Hispanic Homeownership report. As we see, there's a lot of positive trends. I think we're here to celebrate that. I think I'm a glass half full type of individual. But we also have to recognize that the industry is going through a lot of change, right? Not just because of the lawsuits, but also just the big fact in terms of the tremendous headwinds that the consumer has, right, to get through to where they are now. And so for me, why I'm positive is that really the segments that were really, really lagging behind, even the African American community, were pushing through all these headwinds, right? Positive growth that we hadn't seen as well in the African American community, the Latinos as well continuing that growth. So how do we balance that out, right? How do we continue that momentum and really focus on our core values, right? To make sure that our practitioners are moving forward with that. So Amy, I want to start with you. You've been at REMAX for a long time. REMAX is a very known brand. And I think one of the things that I think about REMAX in terms of a lot of the training that you provide, a brand that provides a lot of great training out there. But, you know, during COVID, I think the industry as a whole kind of lost their way, right? They were getting leads as a whole. People were just growing and growing a lot, making a lot of money. A lot of people in here made a lot of money. How many did well during COVID? All right. And so a lot of great opportunity there, but unfortunately sometimes you get into these bad habits and you forget kind of in terms of the importance of really serving people right where they are and making sure that you're not rushing them through the process. How do you get back to the basics now in this conversation when it's so important, especially when talking about first-time home buyers and our Latino community?
Sure. Hi, everybody. It's great to be here. So I think with us, we've never left our foundation in education. We have REMAX University. It's available on demand. There's over 90 courses that are in Spanish, you know, for our affiliates. You know, we've got 25,000 agents in Latin America, which is incredible. And so even through COVID, you know, RU went strong because we had to adapt to the market. Everything changed in the way we worked. But that portal allowed us to continue to educate our population. You know, our agents have twice the experience. They are 2 times, you know, as productive. So they're the most educated professionals in the business. And so that really bolsters us with our RU platform. And we use that because you need a lot of skill when you're navigating first-time home buyers. They just absolutely don't know. And so they need a professional who can walk them through every single step of the transaction. And so, you know, with a lot of the changes that we're going to see in the industry, and we'll probably talk a little bit more about that, you know, we have a number of specialized courses and designations to educate our agents on how to articulate their value and also educate the consumer on why is buyer agency imperative and what does that give them over and above what a, you know, non-buyer agency situation gives them. So we want to make sure that, you know, we're our agents are prepared to excel no matter what the conditions are.
Absolutely. I don't think anyone wants to go back to sub-agency days, right? I don't think some people know that. So, Mike, congratulations. I had the privilege of being at your 121 last week, and I don't know if people have noticed this, but you seem to have some very successful Latinas that are part of our board.
They're going to notice tonight.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
They're going to notice tonight.
And one of them in particular is our incoming president, Nora Aguirre, out of Las Vegas.
Nora.
So what I love about Nora is that really she chose the path that is not the easiest path, right? And we're talking about specializing with first-time home buyers. But now she's in a point where she's obviously a trusted advisor, right? How do you elevate someone like that and within your network and make sure that people are focused on that? Because like I said before, I think people forget that and the importance of serving first-time home buyers, and really the reality that that's going to be our core customer, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're dead on. First of all, I have to give a shout out to everybody in this room, because for us to get the results that we have in the release of the home buyer report this morning is because of everybody in this room. So congratulations, guys, on elevating Hispanic home ownership again year after year. And I think it goes back to what you just mentioned. A perfect example is Nora and what she does. I think, as people put us under the microscope as, an industry, and as people question whether or not we deserve to be compensated and how much we deserve to be compensated, I think it goes back to being that educated, trusted advisor. One of the things that we're super proud about at Century 21 is for literally decades, we have been measuring customer service and the results of our agents and what the feedback of those customers are. And we know, shadow of a doubt, the folks who earn quality service awards from our consumers just do more business. They do more repeat, more referral business. Just last night, I was talking to Edna Mitchell. I don't know if she's in the house, and discussing just some of the things that we have to do as real estate professionals to guide people through the 180 plus steps that there are after they see a home on their phone and decide that they like it, or a community that they want to go to. And again, I say this, we're not just trusted advisors. Sometimes we're contractors, movers, and marriage counselors. But we were talking last night about having to go out and teach people about what it means to go into probate, what has to happen during estate planning. And so I think it's really important that you guys recognize and make sure that you're always telling your consumers the value that you bring to the table and what you are going to bring them through on this journey, which is the dream of home ownership. And one of the last things when we talk about education, and I'm super excited about this, it's one of the reasons I'm so attached to this organization, why I try to show up and be part of it. We're going to kick off this really cool program with Unidos. I don't know if Lot's in the room right now, but it's a program specifically geared towards getting Latinos to qualify for loans so that they understand what has to happen and that education that falls in line so that they can be qualified for a home and then eventually purchase it. So I'm excited by that as well. And again, I think our job, all of us, is
and that's why we preach, especially if you're a brand in this space, we want your CEOs and presidents to be in this room, right? Don't just send us your head of CRA, your head of DE&I. You need your presidents and CEOs need to be in this room. And I appreciate both of you being here, because if you hadn't been in the CBOG room, or you wouldn't have met Lot, you wouldn't have had that happen as a result of that, right?
Great point.
So thank you. So Lisa, now I want to make sure to bring you into this conversation, because you can talk a little bit more openly about kind of what you're seeing out there, right? And we've talked about this, and there are some concerns if things play out. Hopefully they don't, right? But in terms of really the issues that we could see, not just from compensation, really what's most important about the first-time home buyer, how the consumer's represented, that they have their own representative, and then also fair housing. How huge of an impact can you lay out for us would be implicated if this happened?
Jason, I don't think you want me to be as open as we were in our discussion, but of course, we see huge implications from a fair housing perspective, particularly when you look at the history of the United States and realize that it wasn't too long ago when real estate, the largest real estate trade association in the United States, had as a part of its code of ethics a requirement that real estate agents segregate communities and not integrate communities. In other words, oppose the Fair Housing Act and the Civil Rights Act of 1866. So we have a lot of real estate professionals who were trained in an era where they thought and were taught to believe that exclusionary practices, that housing discrimination should be the norm, right? Now, that's a huge challenge if you remove from the equation real estate professionals who have been highly trained on fair housing issues. You heard Amy and Mike talk about, and I'm sure Courtney will too, about all the work that their organizations have done to train real estate professionals on fair housing laws. But there are many practices, there are many barriers that still exist in the marketplace. Who is going to help that first-time home buyer navigate those barriers and explain to them what the law really is? You know, we just came out of a massive foreclosure crisis and predatory lending crisis in which we had people who presented themselves to be professionals, give very inappropriate information to consumers. And it was those real estate agents who were trained, deeply trained on fair housing issues, who could tell the consumer, no, what your broker is telling you is not accurate, or what this other person is telling you is not accurate. So I am concerned. We have done a ton of work. You noted that for the first time since 2004, we have had continued homeownership growth in the Black community. So from 2004 until 2019, the Black homeownership rate was on a continual decline. And it had reached its lowest point in 2019. The Black-white homeownership gap in 2019 had grown to be as large as it was in 1890. 1890. So we had over 100 years of regression, right? In 2019, we were able to put in place a bevy of solutions that turned that ship around. And now, since 2019, we have seen continual growth in the Black homeownership rate. Since about 2012, indeed. And NAREB, thank you, NAREB, because NAREB joined us in helping to turn that ship around. And since about 2012, we've seen continual growth in the Latino homeownership rate. We have to keep that growth going. So I want to disabuse you of the notion that we are on the right track to see continued growth. If we don't make sure that consumers are protected and that good real estate agents are protected in this process, we'll slip back.
Thank you. So, Dr. Rose, I want to bring you into this conversation. I think people that know, I try to be as transparent as we can. We have, National Association of Realtors is a partner of ours. They are as you with you as well. And I really want to commend them, especially though the focus over the past 3 years, kind of that focus on bringing people in, talk about fair housing. But as we know, that wasn't always the case, right? It is a membership organization, and so even there's staff, and then you have members, right? There's obviously a difference, and for a long time at the beginning, right? Black realtors you weren't allowed to be a realtor, right? And that's really how NAREB got started. So now we come to this area where we're talking about the buyer side representation and the attack on the industry, but more importantly, I think what we're talking about here is the first-time home buyer and the impact there. So tell us about what conversations you're having and how you're changing the narrative to make sure that we focus on the right thing.
Let me first say, Jason, thank you to NAREB and Gary Acosta, yourself, for inviting NAREB to be a part of this important conversation. And you're right, the history of NAREB is we're 77 years old, and our members are called realtists instead of realtors, because when we were founded, African Americans could not become realtors. So our 12 founders founded the Realtist organization and have grown it to thousands of members in 120 chapters across the country. So we're very proud of being realtists because our focus has always been democracy and housing. Democracy and housing. And we have been focused strictly on raising Black homeownership since its inception. So the industry is changing, but one of the things that we think is very important is that the role of the real estate professional is still the same, what it always has been and what it always should be, which is as the trusted advisor, as the consumer advocate, and the professional that is consumer focused. That's the role, that's the job, and that's the role in the job regardless of who is paying for it. Regardless of whether the payment is coming from the buyer side or the seller side, the role is still the same. One of the things that we're particularly concerned about at NAREB, and I know you all are too, Jason, is that the consumer that could be hurt the most in this process is the Black and brown consumer. It's the first-time buyer. In our community, it's the first-generation buyer, meaning I can't talk to my parents about the process. I can't talk to other friends about the process because I'm a first-generation home buyer. So they need that trusted advisor and that real estate expert to guide them through the process more than any other consumer does. So that's what we're focused on, is not having casualties in this process and still being able to move Black homeownership, Hispanic homeownership, minority homeownership forward.
A lot of work to do. So I'm going to talk now on the Hispanic market. We talked earlier about the release of our report, the momentum there. But as a brand, and that's one of the things that I really like to see when we go to these conferences, is that it's become much more prevalent. It's no longer just this side thing. I mean, I can't tell you how many, if I do another D&I session at another event, I don't know what I'm going to do. I think we could do that full time, right? But we're much more than just D&I folks in this room, right? We're practitioners, we're business focused on this. And so I like now that I think the market is starting to catch up and they're starting to realize this isn't just a niche, it's really going to be the focus going forward. So, but unfortunately the brand, a lot of companies aren't there yet. I think I look at this, our brand is kind of like Google, and everybody wishes that they had invested in Google 20 years ago. We talk about it, but this is no greater return. If you want to put your business in a Google-like situation, you should invest in the Latino market. How do you get people, riled out, excited about it, Mike, when, majority of practitioners are still close to 80% non-Hispanic?
Yeah, I think it's like Gary said. I mean, if you don't take hold of it, if you're not involved, if you're not engaged, and if you're not building this part of your, brand's community, then you're going to get left behind. Like, the market share will pass you by. And I think that, from a Century 21 perspective, I always say that we've been diverse by nature of who we are, 85 different countries. We just had as you mentioned, our 121 event, where we had our first ever bilingual La Conexión, where we had, almost 10 Spanish-speaking countries in the room conversing just in Spanish. Lexi Lopez is in the room. She was a big orchestrator of that. But I think thank you guys. Appreciate it. As I think about what we're all talking about here and what we're all trying to accomplish, and this is really came out when we sat down with some of the other leadership at NAREB over the years. The way that we all push this industry forward, the way that we get more sustainable home ownership for Black and brown communities, is bringing more Black and brown professionals into the real estate industry. Gary said it yesterday, most people who get into the industry get in because they know someone else. And this is an amazing industry to be in. It's such a driver of, obviously, not just wealth, the gateway to the middle class, all the things we discuss and describe. But I think you've got to be really intentional in your strategy. At Century 21, we are. We for years have had our Empowering Latinas program where we're trying to bring young professionals into this business. We have an inclusive ownership program where we're trying to pave the path for folks who are entrepreneurs who want to own their own brokerage, who want to serve their communities in the way that they deserve to be served. And I think it's only through those means, only through us as leaders in this industry, by bringing in more people, educating them on how to be successful, that they will then pave the way for the consumer and be that trusted advisor and push the agenda that we all know is possible. So for us as leaders, we've got to open the door and let others come in. And it's honestly up to everybody. There's leaders in this room. Everybody in this room is a leader. But it's up to us to put our money where our mouth is and just go out there and make it happen.
Yeah. Same question, Amy. Yeah.
I think I agree with so much of what you've said. We started on this path 30 years ago. Mexico was the third country that we partnered and grew with. And we're in all 34 countries in Latin America, which we're the only brand that can say that. And so we're 25,000 strong. And again, it's truly our belief that, being inclusionary of everyone, because all of our consumers are a diverse group, right? And so we need professionals to serve them at an extremely high level. And that, I think, is something that we do at an extraordinary level. And we will continue, with our partnerships with all of, NAREB, AREA, we will continue to do so because we believe that it is completely impactful for us to have a voice in this room, for us to constantly be listening to what are the challenges out there so that we can make sure everything that we build back at the mothership serves both consumers and our professionals who are serving those consumers on a regular basis.
Thank you. So, Elisa, as we talk about this momentum and this growth, that also comes with challenges. When we talk about fair housing, it's not always the most exciting thing, right? You see our practitioners here are really at the front line. It's fair housing violations to me they're very difficult sometimes to identify, things that happen after the fact, but relies on really an astute practitioner to really call it out, right, to protect those. So we need more people. What are the nuances, though, when you're looking at this growth with the Hispanic market? You're also going to see some other types of violations that are nuanced to Latino consumers, potentially Spanish dominant individuals. Walk us through some of the things that you're observing that we should be cautious for.
Jason, we would be here all day if I were to comprehensively answer that question. I mentioned before there are lots of barriers in the marketplace. Appraisal bias is a huge barrier, and we see that there are a large percentage of Latino and Black potential mortgage applicants who get denied based on collateral, and that mostly means that the property didn't appraise out. Appraisal bias is a huge issue. We are handling a record number of cases in which Latino and Black homeowners have had to, what we call, whitewash their homes in order to get a fair appraisal. So that is a major.
Down and
you have to
that.
remove
Yeah.
all of your family pictures. You have to remove any identifier, right? Anything that could identify you as being Latino from the home, and then invite a white friend to come in and then put pictures of white people and things like that in the house in order to get a fair appraisal.
Or you could be like my mom, just leave the original picture that's in the frame and not just put
And
the
just
picture.
keep it there.
Just like the stock photo,
Just keep it there.
Yeah.
But real estate agents, let's be real, many real estate agents, when they are representing a Latino family or a Black family who is trying to sell their home, actually do advise those sellers to whitewash their homes so that they can get a fair offer on the home. So those are still issues. We are very much concerned about the proliferation of pocket listings.
Yes.
We just had a case here in Washington, D.C., where the seller of a home was told by their neighbors, we want to see the names and information of everybody who submitted an offer on your home, and they looked at the LinkedIn profiles and the Facebook profiles of all of those people, and the neighborhood community made the decision about who would be accepted.
Yes.
We're seeing increases in that. We're seeing increases
And
in
that will only grow exponentially if things play out the way
Exactly.
you know. Well, yeah. Go
Exactly.
ahead.
So the last thing that I'll say is I'm glad that Courtney mentioned first-generation home buyers. In the United States, roughly 70% of first-generation home buyers are people of color. 30% are Latino, 30% are Black, and then 30% are white, and then the other 10% are Asian American, Native American, et cetera. So we do have to spend more resources supporting first-generation home buyers. And the last thing that I'll say is that the majority of our fair lending cases and appraisal bias cases come from real estate professionals who recognize that their clients are facing discrimination. So it's really important that real estate professionals pay attention to fair housing issues.
Absolutely. So we have a few minutes, and Dr. Rose, I'd love to come to you. One of the arguments that's out there, I mean, or the correlation, which I think is poor, which is to say, because the average number of transactions out there, you know, is so low, maybe 6 a year, that therefore there's poor quality because of a result of that. And my argument sometimes is because going back to those days where you have a lot of these mega teams that are out there, and I get pumped into this system where I'm just one of thousands of transactions. I almost feel that within our community it's a little bit different, right? We understand that buyer, and it's not about how many transactions I do as a real estate practitioner, it's how well I do that job and that role. But our industry is not always just meant for full-time people, right? It's given our community, I think that's one of the things that I love about this industry, is that it is a great equalizer. It's for someone that can come in, and if they do the hard work, they provide quality, they can make it. And they might not want to be a top producer. Maybe they want to be flexible and stay home, or they have another job, but it allows them to do that. And so to me, I think that's something that we should make sure that we protect that as well, because I think people are saying, oh, well, some people are out there with just, a high school diploma, and, they should have a college degree. What are your thoughts around this kind of conversation? Because it's almost defeating, especially now that we're seeing a growth of more young Black and Latino realtors coming into the scene.
I think it's important to embrace those that want to come into the industry because representation is so important. Mike just spoke to that it's important when you're making the largest purchase, typically of your life, that you have someone that looks like you, that can communicate with you, that you feel comfortable with. And that is not an average cookie cutter look. So I think it's important for us to be able to embrace professionals coming into this industry. One of the things that NAREB is doing as an initiative next month is we have launched the NAREB 100 City Building Black Wealth Tour. And this tour is focused on penetrating into our communities and not losing the momentum of the importance of homeownership. With this tour through our local chapters, we will be in 100 markets across the country on April 13th, 2024. And one of the things that we're doing is, of course, classes on ABCs of home buying. We have a new course that we have curated, What to Do with Big Mama's House, with the National Bar Association of Black Lawyers, that's focused on heirs property and passing real estate along effectively. We're doing investing in real estate, the loan process, but we're also doing careers in real estate. Our target is 100,000 Black families on April the 13th, 2024. And we are not going to go into our communities and teach and train about homeownership and investment without the invitation to our community to be a part of this industry, without asking our community and giving them the opportunity to learn about being a Black appraiser, about being a lender, about being a real estate agent and inspector, and contributing to this industry. So we're taking advantage of this opportunity where we're penetrating into communities to also bring our community into the real estate industry also too.
Excellent. So let me continue. Last one here. Maybe I'd love to, as we I'll let you kind of close this out. We're in a lot of real estate companies just focus on the top producers, and what I see is a lot of them just kind of, just go to the next best offer, and you're just kind of switching, and we're forgetting about the new people to come in, right? So I'm talking about building this pipeline of talent. How do we get back to that? How do we get back to the fact that, hey, let's recruit, let's get some new people into this industry, and not just the top producers, which probably give you the most headache too, right? I mean,
Sometimes.
Yeah.
I was an agent and a broker
Yeah,
before being in this role. So yes, sometimes that can be a little bit of a challenge. But honestly, I think that, the industry as a whole is designed to give however much an agent wants to pursue, right? After leading agents for as long as I did, I would find that some of them didn't want to become a team. Some of them, truly wanted to just be top professionals, and they wanted to serve their sphere. And so they would do, 10, 12, 14 transactions a year, and they are considered a professional at that level. I will always advocate for active professionals in the market. I don't know that it's necessarily great for consumers if somebody's doing one deal every other year. I do think that it's important that, time on device and, a level of skill set elevates once you have a certain number of transactions consistently under your belt. And so I think that's critically important. Growth is the foundation of our business, and we are constantly, through our broker partners and all of our initiatives, constantly working to bring, new agents into the business. About a third that come into our system, are new agents, and we've tooled our education to help elevate their skill set pretty quickly. But foundationally, I think growth is everything in our industry. It is how our industry has evolved over time, and it is how it will continue. So, we have no plans on stepping off the gas on that one.
thank you. Well, thank you so much for this diverse and broad conversation that we've had today, and everyone enjoy the rest of the conference, and we'll bring back our lovely